All right, this is a video walkthrough for assignment PC 5.5, which is from January of 2021. I'm Mr. Rollison. It's for my class. So this walkthrough is for the law of sines. So before we go to the worksheet, let me just write out the law of sines for you. You're going to notice it looks a lot like the Pythagorean theorem, and in fact, the Pythagorean theorem is a special case of the law of cosines. So the law of cosines says this: c squared equals a squared plus b squared. That looks pretty familiar, doesn't it? Minus, now we get to something else, minus 2 times a times b times the cosine of c. So let me draw a triangle so you can see what that means. Any triangle will do as long as you label it correctly. So we have angle A, angle, I really should have drawn it somewhere else, I think, because that is going to be, it's not going to work out well. I'm going to run out of room. All right, so here we go. So we've got a triangle here. Just any triangle, it's not a right triangle or anything. So we've got angle A, angle B, angle C, and then opposite each angle, in lowercase letters, we're going to label side A, side C, and side B. All right, so now here's the big thing, the main thing, the most important thing with the law of cosines. So this right here, that's side C. And this right here, that's a side. And this is an angle. So this is the important thing. The angle that you're using in the law of cosines has to be on the opposite side of the equal sign. I mean, or, the algebraic equivalent. You can rearrange this if you're trying to find side A or whatever you're doing, right? But it has to be the algebraic equivalent of having the side length on one side and the cosine of the opposite angle on the other side. Again, like I said, you could rearrange it if you want, but that's basically how it works. So here's angle C, which means that's on one side, and the opposite side, that has to be on the other side of the equal sign. And that's how that works. That's the main point. And you can, when you set these things up, the letters don't mean any, I shouldn't say they don't mean anything. They mean whatever you want them to mean. And you could say x squared equals y squared plus z squared minus 2yz, and then you gotta do cosine of that opposite angle, right? And that would be for a triangle labeled x, y, z, x, y, z. Oops, I did that wrong. Sorry. I'll give you a chance to see that I make mistakes. And hopefully you caught that before I did. And you said, hey, wait a minute, that's not right. The main thing, again, it doesn't really matter what you label them, as long as the angle and the side are on the opposite sides, or the algebraic equivalent of being on the opposite sides. Okay, so let's erase that whole thing, and now we're going to go to the worksheet. Here we go. Find each measurement indicated. So let's move that up a little bit like that. I wish I could figure out how to draw a box or something, but there does not appear to be a way to draw a box. No boxes. Okay, because then I would make a big white box and we'd have lots of space. If I use something like that, I can go off into the black. Okay, so we're going to do number 1 and number 2 are exactly the same. They're pretty much all the same. So we'll just do number 2 here. So this is the one we're working on, okay? So we're going to write the law of sines. But we're going to start by noticing that we have a side and an angle. And we're supposed to find the length of this side right there. So that happens to be opposite the angle, right? So that's going to be, if we label all of these, just to make sure we're kind of getting this consistent labeling in our head. So if that's B, that's going to be side B. If that angle is C, this is going to be side C right there, which means that's going to be side A. And you remember what I said about the law of sines is that the big important thing is to make sure that at least you have the angle and this angle and the side, the angle that's squared, the angle that you're taking the cosine of and the side that's squared have to be on the opposite side of the equal sign. So in this case, it's not going to be C, it's going to be A, right? So if I'm going to set this up, and I'm going to say that A squared equals B squared plus C squared minus 2 times A times B. Oh, I just did that wrong because I'm so used to the other way. So used to using certain letters. And if the letters really trip you up, you might want to consider relabeling your triangle instead of using different letters. But that's going to be 2 times B times 2 times B times C times the cosine of angle A, right? And now I've got, again, just to keep pointing out the same thing, this and this are on opposite sides of the equal sign, right? And don't even have to use the phrase algebraically equivalent because they are just plain old on the opposite side, right? So now we just have to start plugging in numbers, don't we? So we're going to know A is what we're trying to find because that's what we labeled side BC. So I'm going to say A squared equals, and then I've got B, that's 21 squared, plus C, that's 30 squared minus 2 times 21 times 30 times the cosine of the angle that we have there, right? Cosine of 123 degrees. Now, if you're very calculator proficient, you can do this all in one fell swoop. And if you are not, then you would be well advised to do it piece by piece. I'm going to do it piece by piece for you. So 21 squared. We'll just go on. So 21 squared is 441. And 30 squared is 900. And 2 times 21 times 30, 2 times 21 times 30, that equals 1260 minus 1260 times, what's the cosine of 123? Make sure you're in degree mode, unless of course you're not using degrees, but we are. So the cosine of 123 degrees is negative 0.5446. Negative point, and let's see, I think in this instance, we'll just stay with 4 decimal points, just because that's kind of a good rule of thumb. 5.446. All right. So 441 plus 900. So A squared equals, and again, if you're calculator proficient, You do not need to use all these steps. But I will tell you something. Make sure you have a good understanding of where to put the parentheses and all that stuff. Like when you're using the square root function, the whole side, actually I'll set it up in a second for you, calculator wise. So now we need 1260 times negative 0.5446. So that's going to be minus, but it's going to be minus a negative, right? Because 1260 times negative 0.5446. So it's going to be minus 686. We'll just take a decimal there since we've got it. All right. So then we'll say that a squared equals, well, we'll just do that all. 1341, 1341 plus, because minus a negative, 686.2, that's going to equal, I wrote that one down too soon. That's going to equal 2027. And there's a 0.2 on there, but this number is so big, who cares? We're not going to worry about it. So then we got to take the square root of both sides, right? So a equals the square root 2027, which equals square root of 2027 equals 45. So the length, does that make sense? And then, so the length there, we're saying the length of BC is 45. And then one of the things you always want to do with any math, physics, and especially with geometry, is just say, well, does that make sense? If let me get a different color. If this side here is 30 and this side here is 21, that's 51, and that's an awful big angle right there. So yeah, 45, that makes pretty good sense for that side. So now we'll go down and we'll just make sure we got it right. 45, yep, okay. Now, so let me do one thing here. I'm gonna set this up like you would in a calculator. So what I'm doing is I'm going to start with this. That's where I'm starting, and I'm going to set it up like you would in a calculator. So you can say that A equals, and then you're going to put the square root sign, and then you're going to put a parentheses because everything has to be under the square root there, right? And then you can put 21 squared plus 30 squared minus, and then if I have a string of numbers, I like to put them all in a parentheses because it helps me keep it clear. 2 times 21 times 30 times the cosine, and then it's going to make, I'm going to run out of room here. It's this fat pen, and I wish I could figure out how to make it skinny. I'm going to have to look that up. Times the cosine of 123, and you got to close that parentheses, and then you got this parentheses that you got to close, and then you got one more parentheses, and if you don't close that third parentheses, you won't be putting this all under the square root symbol. So just to point out what we're doing here. So we got these parentheses right there, right? And then we got these parentheses right there, which is that whole big deal. And then this top parenthesis ties together the square root thing, okay? All right, so you can pause that and look at it as much as you want. I'm gonna erase it, and we're gonna scroll down and take a look and see what other kind of problems we have, because they're all gonna be about the same. Find the measure of angle A. So the way you're going to set that up, it's exactly the same. You got ABC, right? So it's going to be, now we're talking about angle A. So that's the one you have to be thinking about. So the first thing you're going to want to do is think about the sides and labeling them. So if that's the angle A, what's the opposite side? It's going to be this one right there, isn't it? So that's going to be side A, and then the opposite, that's going to be side B, and that's going to be side C. So in this instance, and I'll just set this up for you, and you'll be in charge of doing the actual algebra to solve it, so I don't make this video too long. So we're going to have A squared equals B squared plus C squared minus 2 times A times B. Oh, I did it again. Sorry. Two times B times C times the cosine of A. And now you have to solve this for the cosine of A. And actually, you know what? I will just walk you through it just to make sure you kind of got it. And I'm going to get a light colored thing so I can extend onto the black without getting in trouble. So now we're going to have A squared, and I'm going to subtract that B squared to C squared. Negative 2AB. Oh, that's BC again. I'm starting to feel the time pressure because I can hear everybody scooting around, and I got like 2 minutes left. So 2BC cosine of A, right? So now we're going to have A squared minus B squared minus C squared over, we're dividing out that negative 2BC, negative 2BC equals cosine of A. And that's going to get, remember, that doesn't give you A, that gives you cosine of A. So now we can say, well, we'll do this arc cosine thing, right? The arc cosine of all this stuff. That's going to give you the actual angle A that you're trying to solve for. And that's the way they all work. And I hope that was super helpful. And see you in another video. Bye-bye.